Welcome, everyone. I'm Partha, the CEO and co-founder of Vantage Circle. So much has changed in the last 1.5 years and still changing in the HR space. Lots of companies whom we talk to, lots of partners whom we speak with, each of them is facing a different kind of challenge. While each of these challenges are unique, there's some common threads in those challenges they're facing. And that was the idea for us to do this webinar series. We had this webinar series from 9th of November till today. This is the last and the concluding part of our webinar series. Our idea was to get some of the best speakers and most influential speakers in the HR space to share their thoughts on these challenges which different companies were facing. And one of the challenges was for HR was to make people go beyond their job descriptions. No one was prepared for the situation where we are in today. Okay, how could HR make people go beyond their normal call of duty? And for the employees, how to create an impact and how to lead and do something which is outside the job description. And that's the topic for today, impact players, how to take the lead, play bigger, and multiply your impact. And who better to speak about this than Liz Wiseman? Welcome, Liz. So let me just give a quick introduction about Liz. Liz Wiseman is a researcher and executive advisor who teaches leadership to executives around the world. She's the author of New York Times bestseller, Multipliers, How the Best Leaders Make Everyone Smarter, The Multiplier Effect, Tapping the Genius Inside Our Schools, and Wall Street Journal bestseller, Rookie Smarts, Why Learning Beats Knowing in the New Game of Work. She is the CEO of Wiseman Group, a leadership research and development firm headquartered in California. Some of her clients include Apple, Google, Facebook, basically the who's who of the corporate world. She has been listed in the Thinkers 50 ranking, and in 2019 was recognized as the top leadership thinker in the world. She has conducted significant research in the field of leadership and collective intelligence and writes for Harvard Business Review, Fortune, and a variety of other business and leadership journals. She's a frequent lecturer at Stanford University and a former executive at Oracle Corp, where she worked as the vice president of Oracle University and as the global leader of human resource development. Welcome, Liz. And before I hand it over to you, just some hygiene factors. This would be about 35, 40 odd minutes presentation, followed by a Q&A. But please keep your questions, your thoughts coming into the chat and the Q&A section, and we'll take it after that. And of course, we will share the presentation after this event, along with your SHRM credits there. But in the meantime, if everyone could just put in the chat window where they're coming from, where they're based, and what they're looking for, it will be great. Over to you, Liz.
Okay, first thing, Partha, thank you so much. I'm so thrilled to be here. First thing I did is I put where I am coming from at Menlo Park, California. And I noticed that the picture in my chat, it does not look like me, but it looks very much like my husband. And so I feel like he's maybe hijacked my Zoom account. So that is, that's not me. That's my better half, as they say. But anyway, I'm Liz.
You grow into each other, right?
You do. After 34 years of marriage, you become a bit of mono person. Okay. So we're already seeing we have Ash here from Seattle. Dana, thank you for joining from Two Harbors, Minnesota. And then we see Diane, thanks for joining. We've got Toronto, Canada. So we've already got several time zones covered. And we've got Lillian from Virginia. Now, this is, for me, so exciting because I know we're going to see a lot of people on replay, but our live group is relatively intimate. So this is a great chance for us to really dig into this together. Okay, let me see. We've got Tanya from Toronto and Justin, thank you for joining from Chicago, and Faisal from Nigeria. Now, if I get from Nigeria, okay, great. So welcome. If I get the pronunciation of anyone's name wrong, give it to me phonetically in chat. And I'm going to see if I can learn how to say that correctly here. Michelle from Baton Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Hussein, thank you for joining from Kuwait. And if you haven't had a chance to kind of check in and tell us where you're from, we've got Nikki coming in here from Austin, Texas. That's one of the things that I love about Zoom and webinars is really it's a chance to, for a moment in time, kind of unite everyone from around the world. So we've got a lot of countries and states represented, a lot of time zones represented. Thank you for joining us. Here's what I do. I want to start our conversation. As Partha mentioned, we're going to kind of do a bit of an interactive session and then open it up for whatever is on your mind. I want to start us off by asking you to visualize with me a moment in sports. Now, some of you will visualize maybe American football. Some of you might envision the real football that Americans crazily call soccer. Some of you might envision cricket. But whatever your game is, whatever that team sport is that you play or watch, I want to go to a familiar moment. Now, I watch a lot of sports, and it's not necessarily because I'm a big sports fan, but because I'm a parent and I have 4 children. And I have been to, I don't know if it's in the thousands or hundreds, but I've watched so many sporting events, and there's this familiar moment. I've seen it play out a lot, which is it's a big game. And it's a really important moment. It's a critical moment, and everything is on the line. And it's in between plays, and the coach has to decide, it's a timeout or a stop in the game, and the coach has to decide who to put into the game. There are a number of strong, athletic, capable players available, but the coach taps one particular player. It may not be the strongest or the fastest, but it's the one who understands the moment, the one who can be counted on, the one that knows that what's at stake and knows what needs to be done, who will go into the game, the one who's been paying attention, who will make the play and help secure the win for the team. Now, in the sports world, we call them impact players, these standout contributors. But the world of work also has its impact players. And if you ask almost any manager, who are your players who are clutch, who come through in these clutch moments, the people that you hand the ball to when you know it has to get across the finish line, the people that you can, in like American basketball, like that you can give a no-look pass to, that they'll be in position and ready to go. And virtually every manager can give you that list. They can tell you who are the people that they really depend on, but they may not be able to tell you why. But these people, these are the impact players of the workplace. They're these standout contributors who create value everywhere they go. And they're players that are not only individually amazing, they make whole teams better. People play better knowing that these players are on the court or out on the pitch. So I spent the last 3 years really trying to understand these top contributors, what makes them tick and how do they think and how are they different than other people? And what are some of the small, seemingly insignificant differences in how they think and how they operate that actually create an enormous difference in the impact they have and the value that they deliver to organizations. Now, here's why I think this is important for us to understand and dig into right now. Not just right now, as in, the people that we have assembled here in with Vantage Circle and in this webinar, but like this moment in time in what's going on in the world. It's because people crave impact. It's what I've learned. Some of you might be familiar with my work with, multipliers, and what I have learned studying, some of the most amazing leaders in the world, leaders who bring out the best in others, leaders who invite people to play big and contribute wholly and fully, as well as some of the worst leaders in the world, leaders that I call diminishers that tend to cause people to hold back, suck the life out of teams, and cause people to under contribute and to be underutilized. This is what I've learned, is that people want to contribute at their fullest. In fact, people come into work every day desperately wanting to contribute at their fullest. And when they can, it is, and we're going to really work chat today. Just put in the word for me. What is it like when you are able to contribute at your fullest? Use all of your insight and knowledge and capability and to contribute and to play big and to make an impact. What's a word that would describe it? Michelle, thanks for getting us kicked off. So it's fulfilling, empowering, amazing, rewarding. Catharsis, that's a fun one. Any others? It's refreshing, valued. One of the words that I hear often is that when people say they're contributing at their fullest, it's exhilarating, like amazing. It's energizing. However, when people can't, when people are holding back, when they're working hard but not making a difference, not able to contribute all of their know-how and intelligence, work then is fill in that blank for me. Nikki, thank you for that comment on the last one. What is it like when people aren't able to contribute at their fullest? It's disappointing. It's complacent. What is the work experience like when you're not able to make a difference? It's frustrating. It feels like you're stopped up. It's disappointing. It's morale eroding. It's boring. It's heartbreaking. Thank you for that. People feel disengaged. You know, when I went out and studied this, looking at the effect these leaders have, the words that came up most frequently were when we are underutilized. It's frustrating, and strangely, it's exhausting. Why is that? Why is it that it is exhausting to be underutilized? Tell me that. Why is it exhausting to be underutilized? Because you're putting energy into being utilized that isn't being met. So it's like unproductive energy because it's the opposite of what gives us energy. Yeah, emotional energy is being sucked out. It's so much effort. It's like we have to work so hard in some ways to earn the right to have an impact. We're wasting energy. Yeah, you know, it's tiring, it's draining, it's exhausting, and it leads to burnout. And right now, so many parts of the world and so many workplaces are dealing with an epidemic of burnout and the great resignation. And it's so easy. You know, people are working hard and they're tired, they're exhausted. And it is so easy, is it not, for us to assume that burnout is a function of working too hard. But I actually think, and all of my research around the world has taught me that burnout isn't really a function of working too hard. Burnout is a function of having too little impact. When we're working hard, but not making a difference. You see, we crave impact. And so one of the questions, kind of the question I want to pose and center our conversation around is it possible that, we might actually be having not a crisis of burnout because we're working too hard, but maybe it's a crisis of too little impact, particularly as teams have gone remote. And sometimes you just submit your work and you don't really know where it goes. You know, it used to be someone in the hall said, "Hey, Liz, that report you submitted, it was critical because it helped us make this decision that allows us to move forward this project." And you're like, yeah, the work I do matters. But in working in isolation, it's not just social isolation we experience. It's those chains of impact get broken. And is it possible that we can help restore this sense of impact and that maybe we can find a way to get more impact from the time that we are spending working? That's one of the questions that I want to pose. And Lillian, thank you so much for your comments on this. I want people to just use chat to share your insights as we go. I feel like my job here is to throw out some insights and data and just get this conversation started and let the learning happen in chat. So please share what you have experienced with each other. Now, I want to center our conversation here around these two questions related to this idea of impact. And it's the questions addressed by the book that Partha mentioned, impact players. The first question is really kind of the research question I went after, which is, why is it that some people break through and make an enormous difference while other people get stuck going through the motions, sort of turning a crank and doing their job? What's causing that difference? And what if it's not a difference of capability or effort? What if it's a difference in how we think and how we operate? And then a second question, which is what every manager seems to ask when they read this book about these high impact players. They're like, how do I get more of these people on my team or in my company? So how do we build a high impact team or an organization? Okay, so those are the two questions. We're going to jump into this first one, this blue question first, and we're going to take a look at these people that I call the impact players. What makes them different? What makes them tick? To find out, here's what we did. My team and I, we partnered with 9 companies, all leading employers. Some of them are the ones that Partha mentioned earlier, and we interviewed 25 managers at each one of these companies because we're trying to find out who are the people who are really making a big difference and impact, delivering work of extraordinary value. So we interviewed 170 in total, and we asked the managers to identify 2 people. The first, we'll start with the one on the right. The first was someone who was smart, capable, and hardworking, a contributor at any level, whether it was an individual contributor or a senior leader, but someone that this manager had led, either currently or in their past, who was smart, capable, and hardworking, and who was making an extraordinary impact. And we came to call these people the impact players. But we also asked them to identify someone who was equally smart and capable and hardworking, who was doing well. And I don't mean just getting by. I mean doing well, doing a terrific job. And we came to call them ordinary contributors or typical contributors, but these were rock solid contributors. Someone that, you wouldn't mind having a bunch of these people on your team. You'd feel grateful to have a team of folks like this. Now, I should also say in half of the interviews, we asked people to identify someone who was smart, capable, and hardworking, who was under contributing, who was not delivering what you would expect someone at their ability level or their effort level to be contributing. And we call those under contributors. And there's a whole nother interesting story there. We're going to talk about the difference between someone who was doing well and someone who was doing amazing. Now, what I was struck by was first, some of the obvious is how managers describe these impact players and how they estimated that the value contributed by the impact players was 3.5 times on average greater than these rock solid contributors. And they also said on average 10 times greater than the people who are under contributing, equally smart, capable, and hardworking. But I was particularly struck at how the managers described the ordinary contributors, because what they said about them kind of could be summed up in this. They said, they did their job well. They did their job extremely well. Like they were brilliant at their job. They followed direction. They followed my leadership. They took ownership. They were focused. They carried their weight on teams. Like, does this not sound like kind of the ideal team player? And what I could see after going through all of this data and the survey data and our interview data is that these ordinary contributors were stellar, absolutely stellar in ordinary times. But in times of uncertainty and ambiguity and confusion and chaos, and when things felt like they were out of your control, these ordinary contributors fell short. And it was where these impact players really distinguish themselves because they handled these situations very differently than ordinary solid contributors. And there were 5 of these situations in particular. The first was what I call messy challenges, where, a problem presents itself and it doesn't line up neatly with the org chart. It's not really that department's charter or this department's charter. It's not really her job or his job. It's kind of nobody's job, but yet it's everybody's job. The second was unclear roles, where we know we're collaborating, but we're not entirely sure who's in charge. Or, we're meeting together and we're going to work together, but we're not clear who the boss of this meeting is. Or unforeseen obstacles, where something you just could not have planned for, even beyond the contingency plan, just sort of drops in the way, like a global pandemic has done to all of us. Where these unwelcomed, unplanned obstacles drop in unannounced. And then there are the moving targets, where the situation is constantly shifting, needs are shifting, markets are shifting, and the world is changing around us, or we're shooting at a goal, but the goal box moves while we're shooting. And lastly, unrelenting demands, where the workload is increasing faster than the resources are increasing, where we've got so much work, it feels like we just can't humanly get everything that seems to be coming at us. These were what I called everyday challenges, because they seem to be everywhere, whether you work in finance or tech or hospitality or in a hospital, you'll find these kinds of challenges. Or if you leave one job because of these, because they are annoying, all 5 of these, I have to say, from my point of view, they're all annoying. They're all inconvenient. If you leave one job because of these and you take another job, you're probably going to find these same kind of challenges waiting for you there. They're everyday challenges. They're everywhere. I want to stop and ask you about your experience with these. Now, let's start in chat, because I think we can do the math on chat. The question is, how many of these challenges are you dealing with right now? 1, 2, well, it could be none. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Michelle, thank you for getting us going. We see 4, 5, 5, 5. Melissa says all 5, 4, 3, 1 now, but previously 4, 3. Now, if there's anyone who's clever on the fast math calculations, anyone who can do that in their head or pull out a calculator quickly, you can go ahead and tell us what the average is amongst this group. Or if you just want to eyeball it, okay. Well, I think that was Partha saying, I'm going to call that a 4. Maybe Wiseman, I don't know if that average was a 3, but it's sort of around 4 of them. These tend to be everywhere, and we're dealing with them constantly. So, okay, we've got a poll now. And let me see. Prashantjit's going to pull up that poll. And the question is, which of these is most present for you? Which is the one? And, you can make a single choice here. Actually, we're going to go to poll number 2, if that's okay. Prashantjit, can we go ahead and skip over to cancel out on poll 1? And let's just pop up poll number 2, because we've done poll 1 in chat. And the question is which of these challenges is most present in your work right now? What's pressing on you right now? Now, you can pick one of these, or actually you could click on all of them, but what is in your world right now? So click on some, and Partha, do we have enough of the responses that we can take a look at the results? What? And feel free to also put this on chat, if not purely for the therapeutic value of saying, this is the one that I'm dealing with. This is one that is weighing on my shoulders right now. Let's see what the poll says, and let's see what you say in chat. Ooh, unclear roles. So 77% of us are saying that is a problem that I'm experiencing kind of every day. Followed, well, I guess there's sort of a tie, a 4-way tie there for second. But again, feel free to describe that on chat. These are not generally moments of crisis. They're little moments, but it's in these moments that impact players differentiate themselves from everyone else. It's in these little moments and the way they handle it and the way they think about these that causes them to be trusted with the big moments and the reason why they're entrusted with the most important work. Okay, now each one of these presents a choice point. Like, what are we going to do? Before I share with you the research, I want to ask you about your experience. We're going to go back to some of these choice points and these situations for you. I first want you to ask you to reflect back and identify a colleague, actually two colleagues that you worked with that might fit into this impact player category, someone who was smart and capable and hardworking, who was doing work of extraordinary value and making a big impact in your world for the company you work for or your community. It could be inside work, outside work. So I want you to just lock the name of one person in your mind. And then I want you to identify someone who was, a solid contributor, who was smart and capable, hardworking, and doing their job well. Maybe even in the same kind of realm, so we can have an apples to apples comparison. Oh, and Dana, thank you for your comment about each one of these challenges bumps into the other and it builds. It's kind of like a chemical reaction or something. An equal amount of all five every day. Okay, I've got a couple of questions for you on chat. Question number one, when you think about that person who was the contributor, or not necessarily a person who was a contributor and always cast in that role, but maybe who was working from that mindset. Because we're going to see this isn't about two different kinds of people as much as it's about two different mindsets that we sort of move in and out of. Okay, how did the person who was the contributor, how did they handle messy problems, unclear roles, unforeseen obstacles, moving targets, unrelenting demands? How did they generally go about it? Would you put it on chat? Just describe their approach to messy problems. What did they do when roles were unclear? Or when some big obstacle, just like a boulder of an obstacle, dropped in their path? Lillian, thank you for getting us going here on day by day, not thinking too far ahead about this. Okay, keep us going. Just describe what you remember about how they handled that situation. Or if it's in your current environment, how are they handling these today? Okay, taking ownership of the situation. Okay, how did the person in contributor mode go about it? Let me look for a couple more, but if not, I'm going to move us over to the impact player side of things. Okay, calmly, with clarity. Give tasks to different people to move forward. Okay, let me ask you now to think about the person who you identified as an impact player. Before we do that, I want to just read Ash's comment. Like, she would make a loud sigh. Go make a fresh cup of coffee and figure it out. Just onto the. Okay, now I want you to identify someone. You think about the person in impact player mode and describe how this person handled it. Now, if you were thinking of that impact player before, just go ahead and like copy and paste your response back in, because some of you might have already gone to your impact player. But with that impact player, how did they handle these same kinds of challenges? What did they do with the obstacles? Yeah. And Nick's saying involving others in the solution, not necessarily delegating, but partnering with others. And we're going to get to that very issue. It's one of the 5 big differentiators. And Partha saying they took ownership of the situation, pasting that earlier response in. I probably should have been really clear, like before I was asked about the contributor. Right now I'm asking you about your impact player. What did they do? Michelle says they asked questions and investigated new ways to accomplish it. It causes like a rethink for them. Approached it as a team. Go ahead and keep going. Keep filling that in. What I want to do is I want to go through each one of these 5 situations and look at how impact players tended to handle them. Each one of these is a choice point. And each one of these is, now if someone else feels differently, I want you to speak up and represent a different point of view on this. But for me, each one of these 5 situations is annoying. Like, I wish that the problems weren't messy. I wish that targets didn't move. But the reality is They do. So what are you going to do about it? Each of these presents a choice point, a choice between doing something that is good, entirely reasonable, and probably even expected in some organizations, and a different choice, a choice to do something better, something that is not necessarily even harder, something that is braver. Okay. So as we do this, what I want to do is I want to present you a couple pictures. Now, these are GIFs, like little videos that I think try to capture the difference of this. So the first, when problems are messy, when it's not your job, but it's not anyone else's job, but yet it's important. What do? Do you stay in your lane and do your work? Or do you venture out and go into no man's land? Sort of that messy middle space. What do you do? Here's what we find is that in that contributor mode, or people who are working like typical contributors, they keep doing their job. And, after all, like kind of why not? That's their job. But it looks a little bit like this. They could be so focused on doing their job that they're not aware of what's happening around them. Like they're good, they're focused, they're intent, but they don't see perhaps the most important opportunity or problem that presents itself. Whereas people who are operating in that impact player mode, they don't just do their job. They do the job that's needed. Maybe even an inconvenient job, maybe something no one asked them to do. And it looks a little bit more like this. This is when you've got to kind of watch a little bit carefully to see what's going on. It's a man crossing a road. He sees a bicycle coming. And he sees a bicycle coming into traffic. He's not the cross guard, but there he is. And he averts this massive disaster of this rapidly speeding car and this young woman out into the intersection. See, it's not his job, but he does the job that's needed. And the impact player tends to chase down problems and kind of throw themselves on opportunities rather than focus on their job. Let me give you a quick example about this. This was a pivotal moment for me, and it was probably the thing that helped me figure out this first difference. See, I joined Oracle as a very young professional. I'm coming out of graduate school. And more than anything, what I want to do with my career is I want to teach leadership. Now, for what reason, I have no idea why, but that's what I wanted to do. I took a job at Oracle, and I'm working as a program manager in one of the divisions, and I'm coordinating some classes and some education, but I've kind of got my eye on where's an opportunity for me to teach management. And there is a job that opens up, and my boss encourages me to apply for it. And it's with this internal training group. Now, the group had been running these technical boot camps, and these were boot camps on Oracle technology for all of the new college graduates. Now, Oracle's growing rapidly at the time. There's all these people coming into the company, and they've been running these boot camps. And I knew that the company was doubling in size, growing rapidly. I'm like, I know they do technology boot camps, but I have a feeling that their charter is going to expand to include management training, because so many young people are being put into management jobs. They had no idea what they were doing. They weren't getting training. They didn't have any experience. And you can imagine they're wreaking havoc on their teams. So I go interview for this job. I answered the VP's question. I've interviewed with the manager and the director. I'm now interviewing with the VP. I answer his questions, and then it's my turn to, kind of take charge of this interview. And so I decided I'm going to tell him about this observation that Oracle needs a management boot camp. And then I very confidently said, and I would love to help build it. And I'm waiting for him to say, Liz, we'd love to have you do that. You know what? Here's a budget. Go. And he said, Liz, that's great, but your boss has a different problem. She's got to figure out how to get 2,000 new college graduates up to speed in Oracle technology over the next year. And what would be great is if you could help her figure that out. Now, Bob was polite, but the words, what I heard and what I translated to what he said was, he was saying, Liz, make yourself useful around here. Don't push your agenda, figure out what the agenda is. See, when Bob tells me this, I know they need people to teach these boot camps and to teach technology. I wanted to teach leadership, and Bob wants me to teach programming to a bunch of nerds. It's a job I didn't want. It was a job I was not qualified for. And so I had a choice. Do I kind of let that go and wait for an opportunity to teach management training, or maybe push harder that the company needs this? I decided that he was telling me something important. And if it was important to the organization, I would make it important to me. So I took that job, and turned out I became a pretty good technical trainer. Turned out I really loved that job. And because I did that job willingly, and because it was so important and what was needed, the next opportunity opened up, and then the next, and bigger jobs and bigger responsibility. And when I finally got around to being able to build a management training program, which didn't happen more than like a year later, I could do that work, and it landed with impact. It taught me to do the job that was needed. See, while most people are doing their job well, the impact players are figuring out what's important, and they're doing the job that is most needed. Okay, when roles are unclear, when you can't figure out who's in charge, or when the workplace is full of ambient problems, meaning low-grade problems that the status quo is suboptimal, but tolerable, like a clunky business process that everyone complains about, but no one fixes. See, and those are situations where you need people to step up. But, you could live with those problems. And so when roles are unclear or no one's really in charge, what do? Do you wait for someone to put you in charge, or do you just take charge? What we find is that ordinary contributors wait for direction. They want to know who's in charge, and so they wait for higher ups to clarify that, to tell them the role differences, or to put them in charge. See, they're waiting for direction from above. Whereas the impact players in that same situation, they don't wait. They step up and take the lead. They step into a leadership vacuum. If there's a meeting and it's not clear who's in charge, they say, would it be helpful if I led this meeting for us? Or if there's an important initiative and no one's stepping up to drive it, they're going to be willingly offering their leadership services. But what's remarkable about them is not just that they step up and take the lead. It's that when that service is rendered, they then step back and they let other people lead. They pass the baton to others. They follow with the same energy with which they lead. Like they're fluid leaders, and their model of leadership looks a little bit more like this, like a flock of migrating geese. And the flock formation, so it's like instead of the hierarchy of an organization, it's like that V formation. A single bird comes out into that point position and leads the flock. They break the wind. They create drag for the other birds. And but they don't just stay in that role until they exhaust themselves and then drop from the sky, exhausted. When they tire of that lead role, they roll back into the V formation, and another bird comes to the front. They share that leadership. They rotate that leadership. And this rotating leadership in V formation, the scientists estimate it allows a flock to fly 71% further than solo flight. See, what happens in so many organizations is people burn out because the same people are asked to volunteer to lead all the time. They become overtaxed, but everyone else is left underutilized. And what's that experience like? That tends to be exhausting. See, what could happen in your organization? How much further could you go? How much more agile could you operate if that leadership role was shared? Okay, let's go to the next here. Unforeseen obstacles. What do you, it's easy to get things off to a good start, but what do you do when you're in the messy middle and something drops in and you are still very far from the finish line? And it's big and it's out of your control. Do you pass that to someone who can do something about it, or do you hold on? See, what we find is that ordinary contributors in that situation, they tend to escalate issues. They start off strong. They take ownership, but it looks a little bit like this. They've taken ownership and they're moving along just fine until the obstacle presents itself. And then it's like they come to an abrupt halt, like, whoop, okay, I'm done. And then they pass the issue up. The impact players held They took ownership like the others, but they hold ownership. When things got rough, they kept going, but they didn't go alone. It looks a little bit more like this model of leadership. See, they finished the job, but they finished strong, if not stronger, because of the job. They're more like a team of Husky Malamutes, this breed of sled dog that finishes a multi-day endurance challenge with the same vital signs that they started the race with. So these impact players, they get it across the finish line, but they don't do it like heroically, like I'm going to take it all on my shoulders and I'm going to do it and I'm going to exhaust myself and then I can't function or need a new job. They coordinate the response. They hold on to the ownership. They don't pass it to the senior VP who could do something about it. Like, okay, now yours, back to you. They say, Senior VP, I need your help. Could you help with this? Could you help with that? And they pull the team together. Someone said it, like Melissa said, they work as a team to get the job done. They coordinate this response. Moving targets. What do you do when the world is moving around you? Do you kind of like say, okay, this is the thing I've got and I'm going to stay focused on it? Or do you change as the world around you is changing? What we find is that most of the, ordinary contributors, they stick to what they know. And it's like, I'm going to keep doing what has worked, what I've been, pointed at. And in many ways, kind of like this little picture, it feels to them a little heroic and stoic. Whereas we find the impact players are adapters. They're adjusting. Their model of working looks a little bit more like this chameleon that adjusts and adapts itself to fit into its environment. It's changing. It's evolving. It doesn't just respond to feedback. The impact player is asking for feedback. Like my colleague, Sean, who I work with, he and I have worked together for 5 years. And in the 5 years that I have worked with Sean, I don't think ever once I've sat down with him and said, Sean, I have some difficult feedback to give you. Like, I need to tell you you're off target. And it's not because Sean doesn't need it. We all need to be told we're off target. It's that he gets to it before I do. So when Sean does his work, when we start a project, he says, well, what does success look like? What's the target look like? What can I do that's helpful here? And then he goes to work on it. And then when he finishes a piece of work, he starts asking a new set of questions like, did that get the job done? Was that what you needed? What can I do differently? How can we make this better? He makes it easy to give him feedback. And it's not feedback about him like, hey, Liz, tell me I'm great. Tell me I'm doing great. The focus is on the work. It's like the impact player wakes up every morning with the assumption that while they were sleeping, the world changed, something shifted. And they have to not just wake up and keep doing what they were doing. They need to wake up and figure out, how do I need to make an adjustment today so that I stay on target and on track? Okay. Unrelenting demands. Oh, when it just feels like there's more than you can humanly do. See, like most of us, we carry our weight on teams, but when things get really tough, when the workload feels like in some ways oppressive, we tend to ask for help, seek relief. We look to our leaders, to others to provide relief to us, and we end up adding to a burden. Like this little feels like the contributor and the already overtaxed manager is now dealing with this burden. Whereas the impact players in this very same situation, they make work light for others. Instead of seeking relief, they help lighten the load. And it looks a little bit like this. It's not that they lighten the load by taking work off people's plate. Like, oh, hey, Partha, you seem busy. Let me do this for you. It's different than that. It's they reduce the phantom workload, because in any job, there's the real workload. And then there's the phantom workload. What's in the phantom workload? Would you put it on chat? What's the thing that's not the real work, but it's the things about work that make work hard? The extra thing that makes work feel like a burden, that makes you feel like, I don't want to go back to the office. What's the phantom workload like? Let me just pause for a moment on that. Help us understand the things that make a reasonable piece of work just feel heavy, too heavy? I responded to routine questions in email. Like long questions, like emails that are way too long. Email questions that someone could have looked up if they had shown maybe a little initiative. Are there a couple more? Things that are important to other people but have no real use. Micromanagement. Oh, thank you for that, Melissa. It's like I spent the last decade of my life trying to rid the world of micromanagers. Verified data. Maybe when someone hasn't done the checking themselves. Like I would add to this list, politics, drama. See, what the impact player does is they make work light for others because they are easy to work with. If they're going to send you an email, it's going to be clear. They bring a light atmosphere. They bring a sense of humor, a sense of humanity. They don't add to the emotional baggage. They help remove the emotional baggage. In many ways, what they do is they're such a delight to work with because they just don't make work any harder than it should be. They reduce the phantom workload so we can put all of our energy on the real work. And they make work light and they're delightful. People say, I love working with them. Okay, I've got a poll and then one other slide, and then we're going to open this up to questions. The poll is, of these 5 impact player practices that we just went through, if you could pick one that your organization needs, man, I would love for us to collectively be better at this. This is the thing that we need to deal with the messy problems, the unclear roles. Which do you feel like your organization could most benefit from? It's just a matter of opinion. Which would make an impact for you? You can answer this from the point of view of your team or your larger organization, however you want. I'm also going to look to see if anyone's got anything on chat that they want to add to this. Prashanjit, do we have some results for the poll?
It should be there. Just a second. Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Ask and adjust. Yeah, I think, there's been so much done to help people be better at giving feedback and getting feedback. And if I had one suggestion, managers, if you want people to ask and adjust, stop giving people feedback and start giving people information about their work, information to help them calibrate their work. Take the focus off the person and put the focus on their work. And it'll enable you to ask and adjust. Next is to be able to do the job that I need, or both of these have to do with agility. Okay, just in the final minute before we open this up to questions, I want to share 2 ideas. One is when I really look at what is it that makes these impact players unique. It's how they deal with situations that are outside their control, situations that fundamentally feel threatening. And what they do is they tend to dive into these situations rather than run from them. And it's because how they see them. They're working with what I call an opportunity lens. See, when we see a bee, we might very easily say, oh, where there's a bee, there's a swarm of bees, and I'm going to run. That is the way of the ordinary contributor. But the impact player sees that very same bee, and their mind starts to go to, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity to make honey, and I'm going to go build a hive. It's a matter of these 5 everyday challenges saying they aren't going away. They're here to stay. How do I turn these into an opportunity to provide leadership, to do things differently, to change, adjust, to learn, and to create value for the people around me, as well as value for myself? Now, there's a second part of this discussion that maybe it's better to stop and ask if there are some questions. But the second part is not just who are the impact players and what makes them different and unique. It's how do you build a team of them? And I'm just going to pop a few things on the screen, really as food for thought. Well, what do you do? Do you focus on the player? Do you focus on the culture? There's a number of levers that you might look. You might look, how do we work on the individual talent? Maybe we hire for some of the more ingrained parts of the impact player mindset. And I've got a little chart in the book and I'm putting it up here. You can snap a shot of that if you want. And I looked at all of the mindsets and the practices. Some of them are more coachable than others. Some of them are fairly ingrained. Maybe you hire for the ingrained mindsets and you use your training and coaching energy and time and dollars and resources on the more learnable, the more coachable sides of those practices. Maybe you focus on the team culture. Maybe it's just sharing expectations. We don't want you to just do your job, do the job that's needed. There's no prizes to sticking to what's worked in the past. The prize is for those who ask and adjust. Maybe you manage contagion. How do you share some of the practices from the people who are doing this well and decrease the contagion of some of the negative practices? Maybe you focus on the leadership component and you build the kind of leaders that create the safety and give permission for people to expand their range, but also the stretch so that people can't stay in the contributor mentality for long. Maybe you focus on eliminating your own accidental diminisher behavior, the things that we do with the best of intent that causes people to hold back, shut down, just sort of turn the crank and do their job rather than doing the job that really is needed. Or maybe you focus on the organizational culture, including celebrating the assist, not just the players that have impact out on the stage, but maybe the ones that work behind the stage. And maybe you integrate some of these practices into your onboarding routines. Like, hey, welcome to Intuit. We want you to do phenomenal work here. Here's what we hope you'll do, and you'll share those ideas there. Or maybe integrate some of these ideas into your own talent management practices. Now, there's another poll. We're going to go ahead and hold off on that. We can put it up in the background if you want. The question is, what would be the most high impact starting point? If you were to take an idea from this and put it to use in your organization, what would you do? And you can take a look at the options there. I won't read them because I want to save just a little slice of time here for questions. And Partha, what's on your mind? What's on other people's minds? So you could take the poll, you could ask a question. I have a favorite video I can share if there are no questions. Ashley's saying, I'm always going to vote for the video. Maybe I'll show the video and see if that prompts anyone to ask a question. Let me show the video. And I have a few final things I can add, but I'm not sure anyone wants to hear me talk anymore. This is a video of a young woman. Her name is Zia. And she lives in Park City, Utah, like Jeremy Ranch, I think in particular. Had a wonderful chance to go and interview her. She was 10 years old at the time this video was taken. She's got a GoPro camera on her helmet. She's on top of the 40-meter ski jump. Now, she's done the 20-meter ski jump before, but this is her very first attempt at the 40. And I want you to watch her get ready to do this. And I want you to listen to her manager. You'll see the captions on the screen. I think this is what it's like when people are given an opportunity to do things that are hard and to address things that are uncertain and scary and to find opportunity and experience that exhilaration of doing something hard and important and what leaders need to do to enable that to happen. Here you go. Young Zia Terry.
I'll be fine.
Have fun.
I'll do it. Well, here goes something, I guess. Oh, okay, you can do this. I'm gonna jump.
You got it.
Whoa, my ski's slipping off.
Just remember, never snowplow, okay?
No snow plows.
Keep it straight, you'll be fine.
Okay.
So you do on the 20.
Straight. Do you go faster on the in run?
Little bit.
A little bit?
Yeah.
Is it any steeper, do you think? Not much?
Same steepness, it's just longer.
Well, just longer. Just longer. Just a bigger 20, that's all.
Yep. Have fun.
A bigger 20. Go ahead. You got it. I got it.
It's fine. You'll be fine.
Okay. Here.
The longer you wait, you'll be more scared.
I go. Just the suspense at the top at the first time freaks you out. That's the only thing. It's so fun. Huh? 60 seems like nothing now. Whoa!
I think that represents what it's like to work on a high impact team and what leaders can do to help enable that. Now, there's a question here from Dana. How do you encourage growth if the upper leadership is adding to stress? See, a lot of times the stress doesn't come from the work. It comes from those sort of above the work. Now, I'm going to share a practice from the book. Yeah, I call it the 3 whats, but it's about getting clarity on the work. And a lot of times managers just delegate like, we used to call it hot potato when I was a kid. Like, okay, like here's a piece of work. I need to give it off to someone. It's like, okay, hey, you know what, Dana, can you do this? And often managers end up micromanaging because they delegated without thought. And what managers should do when they delegate a work is clarify what I call the 3 whats. What does great look like? How do we know when we've done a great job? Number 2, what does done look like? How do we know it's across the finish line? What do we know? What are the signs that we've finished with this work? And 3, what's out of bounds? What do you not need to worry about? What's just a distraction? But if someone is giving you or your team a piece of work and they haven't done that, you don't have to just lament this. I call it a statement of work. You can go back and ask for a clear statement of work. Like, okay, great. We're happy to do that. Can you tell me what great looks like? How will we know we've done a great job? How will I know I'm done? What are the signs that this is all the way done? And what's out of bounds? Furthermore, if the chaos is coming from above, you can remind those in senior management that what people need to do their best work is they need clarity, they need calm, and they need a sense of control. And if that video represented anything, it was that the coach created this condition. He didn't jazz her up and tell her, go get this, you can do it. He answered her question. He helped her have clarity about, it's just a bigger 20. This is what it's going to look like here. He gave a sense of calm. You hear the calmness in his voice and a sense of this is in your control. He didn't say go. He helped her get ready to the point where she's like, okay, here I go. You can go back and say, okay, what can we do to give people a sense of clarity and calm and help them know that even things that are out of your control, with the right mindsets, we can look at what is in our control and how do we take action. Are there any other questions? Partha, any questions from you?
We're almost out of time, but one question, from your research, if you've seen, are there particular industries or jobs where you see a higher density of the impact players? Do certain jobs allow you to create more impact players? Just from a curiosity.
That's a fun question. And I don't know because I've never cut the data by jobs. I probably don't have enough data to cut it by job. But what I will say is it does vary by organizational culture. So if your culture is full of bureaucracy, it's rule-based, there's a lot of hierarchy, like, oh no, you don't talk to him, he's 2 levels above, you're going to have a hard time finding impact players. Now, a true impact player will work this way regardless of their culture or their manager. It's just kind of how they're wired. They're like, just take charge, make it happen, do the right thing kind of people. But a culture where you'll see this are places that there's some flexibility, agility is encouraged, like self-starting is encouraged. Like, don't wait to be asked, just do it. If you see a problem, fix a problem. And so you'll see some cultural characteristics in the organization that are going to breed impact players.
True. And I think also some national cultures might also impact that, right? Certain cultures are, allow you to be, more, that hierarchy is not there.
Yeah. So this is certainly true. If there's a lot of power distance in your national culture, you're going to struggle a little bit. But I will say in the research, we worked with several multinationals, and what we found is that of the 170 impact players identified by managers, it was evenly split by gender. It was also well distributed by age, and it was also well represented on ethnicity. Of the ethnicities in those workforces, we found impact players of all backgrounds, and across different. It was one of the joys of the research is people who were, countries represented. We had a number of people from India, from Europe, North America, from Australia, Singapore, the UAE. It was really a lot of fun.
Hey,
I know we're out of time. Thank you for the conversation. Thank you for chat, all the insights on chat.
And I think this has been an amazing session. I think I'm going to distribute this book to all my all our team members. Amazing, and I love those videos which you showed, the clips which you showed. It was conveying the lesson so clearly. Thanks, Liz. Thanks for your time, and thanks to everyone for attending it here. You will get the recordings. All right. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and thank you for those heart eyes. That makes me feel like I did something useful.
Right. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.